Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bywire Interviews. I am exceptionally pleased to be joined today by none other than Jaffe from EOS Bees. He's actually the creator of EOS Bees, the queen bee, and of course, one of the first Eden chief delegates. So Jesse, welcome to Bywire News. How are you today?
Hey, Michael, so great to be here. Huge fan of Bywire News and your interviews, and so very grateful to be on today. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, Jesse, and I appreciate that. Thank you. So let's dive straight into the questions. So Jesse, firstly, can you give us just a really brief overview of what the EOS Bees are, how you progressed to EOS Bees 2.0, and why did you decide to create the EOS Bees in the first place? What was your motivation behind that?
Sure. So EOS Bees is a public good marketing group for the EOS blockchain. Our mission is to defend EOS from all the negativity that's out there, promote EOS positively, talk to developers, share the story of EOS to investors, and potentially help onboard founders and connect them with the right people in our ecosystem. Why I started it is, like I mentioned, so I've been in EOS since the beginning, and I believe it started with the branding of Ethereum killer. And I think that spawned a lot of negativity coupled with the big raise from Block 1 and the ICO. So we've been experiencing a lot of negativity. I don't have any proof of this, but I do believe that there is paid initiatives to say negative things about EOS. About even a year before I started it, I was like, we need a group. We need an army to engage with the misinformation and all that stuff. That was why I started it, really because of the negativity. But you know, we've gotten to a point now where it's not just the defending. We're producing content. And we'll get into all that other stuff. What was the other question?
It was so what's the progression from EOS Bees 1.0
yes.
to EOS Bees 2.0?
Yes. Okay. I was reading More Equal Animals at the time when I was thinking of EOS Bees, and I took some advice, and the system that I came up with was basically needed a lot of accountability. So there's 4 roles in EOS Bees. There's the queen bee, the princess bee, the worker bee, and the scout bee. And in the first model, each bee was managing their lower bees, and so everyone was getting paid a salary up front, and we had penalties if some bees were not doing what they were supposed to do, or were not working well, or whatever. And that required a lot of labor, a lot of checking, some micromanaging, and it just wasn't efficient at all. And so I was very fortunate to speak to Reiki Cordone. He's actually of the Telos ecosystem. He's building Haifa DAO, which we're trying to get him onto EOS. But he suggested an alternative method where in order to prove whether a bee has done work, instead of getting the approval from their upper bee, we use a bounty model. And so instead of all of the funds going to salaries, right now, so I'm working on the February report right now. For every 1 EOS that goes to salaries, 2.5 EOS goes to what we call a bounty fund, where a bee does not get paid until they produce the work. And so now bees don't need to be checking on other bees. Did you do the work? Okay. Did you do it? Great. Here's the payment. And so that model has worked way better for us. All the bees are reporting just that the funds are going towards more provable work. And I hope the community has seen that like late January, early February, we started to pick up the pace. I mean, because, well, I'm super into it, so I can notice it. But we're onboarding more hives, we're picking up the pace, and that's because of the 2.0 model.
So how many, we'll unpack some of that in a second, but how many bees do you have now over how many hives, and how many languages does that cover? Because I know it's quite extensive in terms of language.
Yeah, so we have what I call active hives and inactive hives, or hives under construction. So right now we have 11 active hives. They're paid. Pretty much most of the major languages. We can list them if you want, but there's a few inactive hives: Israeli, Arabic, Swahili, that have. I've found a qualified princess bee, and they are finding people to join the hive and potentially join the whole payment structure that we have. The amount of bees, it has been interesting. So, like I said, in the 1.0 model, everyone was getting a salary. So that was very attractive for a lot of people. I'm sure there were plenty of bees that didn't do anything and got a salary. And so at our heights, we had around 250 bees. But now the scout bees do not get a salary anymore. It's all bounty. If you're a scout bee, the only way you get paid is through a bounty. We lost, estimated, about 150 bees after that. And that is coupled with our swarms. And so I think it's a good time to bring up what a swarm is. So a swarm is when all our bees like and retweet a post. And because of the challenge with compensating for swarms, plus moving the 2.0 model where the scouts aren't getting any money unless they do work, we lost some bees. But now we're figuring out the swarm. So at this point, so we went from like 250 to 100, and now we're like at 150, 175.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about then the bounties and the swarms. So how exactly does a bounty work? You mentioned for every one EOS remunerated, 2.5 go into the bounties. So just talk me through how that works exactly.
Yeah, so that was just the split between salaries and bounties. But for the bounties, so we're on spreadsheets right now. We have a spreadsheet, and the princess posts what work they would like to be done. So the princess decides what work in the hive is going to get done. So they post the work. Most princesses use a Google form, so the scouts can sign up for what work they want to do. They complete the work. They give the link, and then the princess takes the link, submits it in the spreadsheet that each princess turns in at the end of the month. And so then I can go through and look in line item. Okay, what was the description of the work? Here's the link, payment hash, that type of stuff. So it's pretty simple. It's like, it's not anything innovative. That's why we want to get Haifa on, so we can do. They have like an innovative solution to do bounties, but so that's how we're doing it right now.
I would contest that it's not innovative. I think it really is very innovative, and it's a great model. So congratulations on creating and implementing it. Although you've lost 60% of the bees moving into 2.0, it sounds like the new remuneration model probably just got rid of the ones who weren't working anyway. So you've actually you've just optimized your existing workforce, which is a much healthier position to be in. So, okay, that covers bounties. So tell me a little bit about how swarming works, and do you think it's actually an effective way of fighting FUD, which is obviously fear, uncertainty, and doubt?
Yeah. So I believe once we get swarms working really well, all the bees are going to come back, plus more. And swarms are effective because it leverages the social media algorithms. So the way these algorithms work, if it counts basically likes and retweets. I mean, it also takes into account how many followers the account that like and retweet has. And, some of our bees have less, some have more. But for example, when we're trying to get it's pretty logical. We're trying to get the attention of an influencer, and that influencer sees, 1,000 likes and retweets on a post, they're going to look at it like, what is this? And if we have good content, they're going to respond. And so there's a couple of things. If I could explain why swarms are challenging,
please.
On EOS, there's we need bulk transfers. And so if I'm paying 100 bees at once, 0.2 EOS, like I'm not gonna, Gray Mass is gonna get rich off of EOS bees. like, so there's some technical limitations there. And so we're working with tip. Well, and so the other kind of challenge is, like I said, it's 0.2 EOS. That's not very sexy for some people. But
sorry to interrupt you, Jesse. What specifically is 0.2 EOS? You haven't explained that.
I'm sorry. So we compensate our bees for liking and retweeting anywhere between, I've done 0.1 to 0.4, 0.5 EOS, depending on how much I want them to, how important the content is to like and retweet. But still, 0.1, whether it's 0.1 or 0.5 or 1 EOS, it's not, it only takes 2 seconds. So the point is, it's low value individually. So if you look at one bee liking and retweeting in a vacuum, it's very low value, and therefore it's very low pay. But if all of them do it in aggregate, it's actually very high value. So there's like an economic challenge there. So we have a technical challenge and an economic challenge, which I think will be solved by Tippet. So we've been working with Tippet. I don't know if anyone knows, but if you've seen the Tippet bot on Twitter and you like it's retweet or comment or both. That's how Tippet works. And if you do that, you'll get like a non-value, like a heart token or a Morty token that doesn't have any value. And so I was like, wow, this is exactly what we need. But EOS has value, Mortys do not. And so therefore we need whitelist functionality. And that's what they are building, what that I have asked them to build. And I think other dApps, other companies can leverage that as well. So we don't want people to take advantage of the pool that's in there. And so by doing that and automating that solution, I believe it'll solve the technical challenge because it automatically compensates bees for liking and retweeting. And I believe it will also at least help alleviate some of the economic challenge because it just makes it easier. There's less friction. And so I'm super excited to work with Tippet. Please donate to them on Pomelo. They're on Pomelo last season. They're going to be on Pomelo this season. Great group of guys, and they're building an absolutely critical solution for the EOS community.
So let me just dig a little bit deeper then, because obviously I think the concept is great. So I just wondered, on average then, how much does on a monthly average, how much does a bee earn per month? And is there any kind of process to get this amount up to kind of an amount where a bee could live off that salary per month? Is there any roadmap to that kind of destination?
Yeah. That's definitely the goal, to get there. We're going to need a lot more support from the EOS community to get there. Like some have said, and I agree, that perhaps we grew a little too quickly in the beginning. Like we have a lot of languages now, and so we're kind of spread thin. Your first question is challenging to answer because it all depends on the bounties. Because if a bee does a lot of work, they'll get more compensation. But just on the salaries, so only the princess and the workers get a salary up front. And right now it's around, I would say, just off the top, I don't have a number in front of me, but I'd say around 10 to 15 EOS a month. But that's without earning any bounties. And so if they do nothing, but so the workers are trusted, and the princesses are trusted. So they're gonna, I assume they're gonna do stuff, and they are. And so yeah, that's that.
So then on average, they're earning about between 50 or so $40 and $80 per month as a base rate with bounties on top. So it's quite a distance to get it to somewhere near to in the hundreds of dollars, let alone the thousands of dollars. So I just wondered, how are you going to be able to do that? Is there any other kind of motivations or any other kind of additional funding, or could you even convince the ENF to give you some extra cash where you could up that to maybe 1 EOS per engagement or something? Is there anything in the works like that?
Yeah. At this point, we're trying very hard to just show the EOS community that we deserve more funding, and we're working very hard, and we're trying to come up with all this stuff and all the different languages and all that stuff. And I know the ENF is watching, and I think that eventually I'll be able to get a nice meeting with them, and we can talk about a direct grant perhaps. But on top of that, so of course there's Eden and Pomelo, which we'll be in, but I've been asked a couple of times. I've been thinking a lot about, well, how could we get our own funds without relying on essentially EOS inflation? And so to me, I have like a logical plan in my head. It's going to take some time, but basically I think of it as a two-phase approach, where the first phase, the EOS community funds us, and we get a large enough team, or like where we get to a point where we can be attractive to companies outside of crypto. So if we go to a company that perhaps is trying to advertise to the type of demographic that's in crypto, so that basically, who are the people following our bees? Right now, they're mostly male, and they're mostly around 18 to 45 right now. So if you have a crypto company and we go to them, and we have 14 different languages, we can get your word out. But it's not like Facebook advertising. This is like word of mouth advertising, because we're essentially all like little influencers right now. And so we could get paid to do that, convert that whatever money into EOS, and then create buy pressure for the EOS token, and then eventually like give back. Like I know Daniel Keys was saying or writing the path of a Pomelo participant, and at the end of that rainbow is a matching partner. So yeah, we're definitely thinking about those things.
That's super cool. All right, so what inspired you then to choose the metaphor or the analogy of bees to create this project? In particular, like the whole theme. So you have the queen bee, princess bee, worker bees, all of that fun stuff. So like, why did you choose bees? Why not bats or eagles or tortoises, for example?
It's funny you said tortoises, because so I've had my own little like digital marketing agency, and it was around tortoises. But the story of the name, I have to give credit to Data Junkie, the longtime EOS champion of the telegrams. The original name was actually EOS Ninjas, and he convinced me very thoroughly that it should not be EOS Ninjas. And bees have that hive mentality. They're very, very good at coordination, and that's what we're all about. We our competitive advantage as a marketing company is coordinating the languages, because each princess bee is bilingual and can speak English. So the Spanish hive is doing something. Oh, that's cool. The Turkish hive is doing that. And then we all become better and more powerful. The names of the roles I've gotten some pushback on, because it's feminine. And yeah, so two reasons why I went there. One, it's more accurate because bees are are female dominated. They're dominated their society. And the other is, so like one of the challenges of that has been building EOS Bees is selecting the princess bees. And because I have to trust them. We have to really trust each other. Now, another part of what I believe our competitive advantages is that we're on EOS and we've been through a lot of pain and suffering on EOS. Like if you did this on Ethereum, there would just be a lot of money grabs, I believe. But so when I'm interviewing people for the Princess Bee role, and they've been in EOS since the beginning, that's like a huge check mark. Okay, so I can trust them there. But then when I tell them that the role is of a Princess Bee, there's a certain expression on their face. And I can tell a lot of what type of person that is by that reaction. And it's actually helped me a lot as a kind of like a personality test, kind of. And so that's why we went with those roles.
Yeah, I think the analogy works perfectly. So I'm glad you were convinced to go with bees rather than ninjas. And I do like the way it works. I'm glad you chose the feminine name. Why not? Everything else is male dominated in our sector, so it's nice to have some femininity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And hopefully we'll attract some women as well. But I think every interview I've done has been to a male, so it'd be good to to broaden that out a little bit.
It hasn't, unfortunately. I did interview one female, and I thought she was great. She was like already an influencer on her own. It was going to be a Persian hive. She had like 50,000 followers on Twitter. And I was telling her, all these princess bees are guys. Like, it'd be great, to get a woman on here, but it didn't work out. But hopefully it will attract some women eventually.
So I just want to talk very briefly about the EOS Russian hive. Now I know they've been doing some really great work translating EOS materials obviously into Russian. In fact, I think the top article on Bywire for a 24-hour period a couple of weeks ago was one of those Russian translations.
Yeah, I saw that. That's super cool.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was very, very cool. I think it was the Fractally white paper translation. I'm not 100%, but I think that's what it was. And to see that it just filled me with pride. It was such a great feeling. So I just wanted to know, obviously I watched the Eden delegate meetings, and you spoke about how inexplicitly your Chinese princess was in Ukraine during the attacks, during the conflict, the war, and obviously you have the Russian bees. And do you have any Ukrainian bees? I'm not too sure about that. So just basically, just tell us about how that's affected, the whole infrastructure there and the whole output.
Yeah, I'm trying to give more attention to our bees in Russia and Ukraine, to ask them, if there's anything we can do. If you are delayed with your responsibilities of EOS Bees, like, let me know, like that type of stuff. Our princess bee, our Chinese princess bee, I'm happy to report has fled the country and is safe now. We do have, and I don't want to say really any specific names because I'm not sure if they want that, but we do have in the Russian hive, obviously they're in Russia and Ukraine. I do know one bee who's definitely in Ukraine, and I haven't been able to talk to him, but our princess bee of the Russian hive, I spoke to him recently, and he's in Russia, so I guess he's safe for now, hopefully forever. There's like, at least for him, and I would assume for other Russian bees, there's very much like of a mental, maybe like challenge, or like a, I don't want to say like depression, but like a sadness perhaps with the war and all that stuff. And so, just trying to give them as much support as I can, and hopefully this resolves as soon as possible.
Has there been any kind of discussions about how the EOS Bees will deal with a macro situation like this? Because obviously the West has cut Russia out from basically everything. But you can note that your Queen Bee is your Princess Russian Bee is still publishing to Bywire, which shows that Bywire is still not being blocked, and it, in effect, can't be blocked. That's the way we built it. But it's also too small to be flagged. That's why it has to be blocked.
Right.
So it's great to see that going on. I just wondered, was there any kind of issues? Or just like, how do you deal with a macro event like this? Do you ignore it? Do you just try and offer support, or how do you deal with something like this with conflicting teams potentially?
So yeah, this is our first one. Trying to offer the most support that we can. Extra, funds in advance. If delays on work, totally understand if you can't work, and yeah, we're just kind of trying to figure it out. I had to reach out to them. They're not really asking me of anything, at least on this one, and they're just continuing to work. I'm just super impressed and grateful that I feel like this situation, like the mission of EOS Bees, getting the information out in the Russian language, thereby promoting the EOS community, is super important. And but yeah, if perhaps in the future there's something we can do, like especially if we had more funds, if there's like, because I know Hernan of EOS Israel has been doing really great work promoting donating to Ukraine and stuff like that, and yeah, we could get to a place like that eventually too.
I guess it's difficult, if you're you want to raise funds or whatever for one side or the other. There's always the tendency to maybe annoy someone from the other side. You never know what side people are on these things. So there's no goodies or baddies. It's just all war. It's just all awful. So it's a difficult position for everyone to be in, I think. So let's pivot out of that into something more cheery, and let's look at influencer marketing. So I believe you've been dabbling a little bit with the EOS Bees with some influencer marketing, and I know this can be a fraught space. So just tell us a little bit about your experience. Did everything go to plan? And if not, tell us what happened, and if there are any lessons we can learn from this.
It very much did not go to plan. And you are right. It is fraught with friction. This was my first foray into hiring influencers, and pretty much everything went wrong. Like, man, where do I begin? So it's not just all their fault. We're also new, and we didn't set the right expectations for our influencers. So a few things. First of all, our influencer strategy is like to share EOS news on one end, like to regular tweets about EOS news, like starting with beginner and then whatever, and interviews. We want interviews with these influencers so we can control the narrative. And so we didn't send them the right materials. The thumbnail on the YouTube video had the Binance logo on it. I mean, it's been fixed now. We do giveaways at the, so we want to incentivize people watching. So we're funding 5 lucky winners win 10 EOS. But so this was our first influencer. All these mistakes happened the first influencer. We're getting better and better. But the giveaway, I'm looking at these addresses, like these are on exchanges. Like, no, they have to be native wallets. Like, so of course they're just like dumping the EOS as soon as I get it. Like, at least we have to make them a little bit tough for them to dump the EOS. Like, get on Wombats, like free EOS account, stuff like that. But so I've been writing the February report, and I feel like we need to take like a venture capitalist mentality with these influencers. And what I mean by that is we just need to pay a bunch of influencers and see which ones, even if a small percentage, give us long-term value and long-term reliability. That's a win relative to the cost of the investment into influencers. And so we worked with 3 influencers this for the month of February, Spanish, Turkish, and in Uganda. No, I'm sorry, in French. Uganda's coming up this month. And the Turkish and the French was more like, okay, here's the EOS staff ecosystem image that we made. Here's the EOS beginner's guide translated. The Spanish was an interview. And so yeah, we want to keep paying. We're going to get better. And another problem is like the like when we actually pay the influencer, it's like a drug deal. Like, no, you pay first. No, you pay first. Oh, no, okay, half up front, half later. It's like, so we finally agreed, okay, half up front, and then the remaining half when you give us satisfactory work. Super tough, these influencers, but this is the path. We need to go in this path, and we'll get better at it. So yeah.
Do you think it's a valid strategy though to attempt to pay these influencers to get them to speak positively about EOS? Do you think that's a solid way for us to kind of raise attention in the for the sector?
Well, I do think it's valid because we're doing it and we're paying it. So that implies I think it's valid. But I guess the reason why I think it's valid is because these influencers, some of them have 100,000 followers, and we have found, I mean, it's not just this month, but the thing is, EOS is dead. So our Turkish influencer tweeted about the EOS staff ecosystem, and she informed, so our Turkish Princess Bee is managing that project. He informed me that she thought, oh, I thought EOS was dead. And then she talked to her influencer friends about the EOS BTC price chart. They wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Like, they're just not going to touch it. And so the whole premise behind this is perception is reality. If you look at the stock market, if you perceive it, it's all about the perception of whether like the company's going to be successful in the future. It's all about perception. Perception is price discovery, in my opinion. And so if we can tell people that EOS is very much alive and you can earn EOS and all this stuff, that will fix the sentiment issue that we have, and I believe would fix the price kind of stagnation that we have.
Yeah, I think the price stagnation is obviously a big issue to do with demand. And you're right, the sentiment is obviously very low. It's very negative, and that stifles demand. So we just need to create that buy pressure, create that demand, but also it needs a fresh story. It needs a fresh reason for people to get involved. And I think that's great that you guys are working on that. So it seems to me like the EOS Bees, when you first started, you were quite focused on smashing FUD. But now I think you've pivoted more to a focus on translations, I would imagine, because that's a repeatable and scalable model through your multilingual support. But I just wondered then, what does the EOS Bees look like in 12 months time? But also, like, what would in your wildest expectations, what could they look like in 10 years time? And I guess to wrap that up would be, what does success look like then for the EOS Bees?
Yeah, so I would like to pivot back to the FUD stuff. Like I described before, the challenges with swarms, that's why we pivoted away from it. We would like to be doing all of it. Translations. So the translations, this is our lowest hanging fruit for EOS Bees, because it's actually super valuable and it doesn't require very high skill and creativity to do them. And so when we come out with our report, you'll see a pie chart of all the different work types that we spend our bounty funds on. And the top two are influencers and translations. And that's kind of the lowest hanging fruit and the highest hanging fruit, I guess. And yeah, it's just very logical to do them. And we need to, like, eventually, so I guess in 10 years time, so right now we're doing this what we call internally our EOS News initiative, where we have a bot on Discord that shares every single thing that the main EOS Bees Twitter tweets and retweets. And then I go in, okay, this should be EOS News, this should be EOS News. They take the text portion of that tweet, like they just translate the tweet, not the content. But in 10 years' time, everything, even the content, should be translated. Every video have subtitles, every article translated, that type of stuff. But I guess more generally, I'll go 12 months and 10 years. So in 12 months, I feel like we're not, I guess, interested in having more hives. Like we have quite enough hives right now. So I would like to increase the incentives. So like the money to work for EOS Bees. Like that's probably our number one challenge. We have like pretty high turnover right now. And that's just because people find better opportunities elsewhere. Now, some of the bees really believe in the vision and they believe that we're going to get more funding and they're staying. But I want to get to a point where, like if I look up what is the minimum wage in country X, I would like to pay them like, 5 times, let's say, minimum wage, full-time work. Like that would be the dream. That's like, I guess that's more like 10 years for our scout bees. So again, there's different bees here. So for our scout bees, I'd like to pay a multiple of minimum wage in their country. For princess bees, like full time, for them, like the cost of living in their country, I want them to think it's a very attractive opportunity to work at EOS Bees. So whatever that is, 50, 100,000 of their, well, I know, like if you watch Squid Game, like on Squid Game, the prize was 42 billion, but it's like divided by 1,000, it's like 42 million. So whatever it is, I just want it to be a true full-time job. And then we can really do some things. And so yeah.
So I guess then obviously generating income is going to be a key part of your roadmap. So on that point, I assume you're planning to raise again on Pomelo for season 2. So if you are, could you tell us what the offer is going to include? Is there any progressions? And then just more generally, obviously you have Eden, potentially Fractally, but how do you see yourself generating more revenue over the longer term?
Yeah. So on Pomelo, our pitch, we're going to show, again, we're coming out with very, very detailed reports. You can literally look in and see every single thing the hive did. And so we'll be sharing those reports on Pomelo. And of course, our roadmap is, like I spoke about, more translations, more influencers. Those are our top things. On Eden and Fractally, the chief delegate role has been a really interesting role, and I very much enjoy it. The camaraderie with my other chief delegates and like I guess the networking and just the connections have been really fruitful. So I do plan on running again. I hope the EOS community has liked what I've done as a chief delegate. So that's that. Fractally. So Fractally is really interesting because they have extra incentives for teams. And, maybe I'm biased, but I think we have one of the best teams. Like we have like a very epic team, I feel. And we very much contribute to EOS, and we also kind of have an advantage. And I spoke about this in the chief delegate meeting, where our work that we do is very engaging and understandable to everyone. Whereas when a developer talks about tech debt, like that is tough to sell. Tech debt is tough to sell. And so I think we can do very well on Fractally. I just generally speaking about Fractally, I think it's a great kind of next step from Eden. And I hope that while Fractally is being built, Eden can take some of these improvements to do in our Eden elections while Fractally is being worked on. And then we already talked about getting outside of the crypto culture to try to get business with fiat and all that stuff. And I think that should hopefully be sufficient. And then, of course, we have a treasury of EOS tokens. If we could just get the EOS price up, like, that's income for us. Yeah. And so all those things could happen, and that would allow EOS Bees to live.
So I've heard some people in the community mention this. It's not something that really bothers me, but I think I'll ask the question anyway. Do you think EOS Bees then has an unfair advantage just by the makeup of how you're built, how your teams are distributed? Do you have an unfair advantage then on platforms like Pomelo that provide a quadratic funding mechanism? And is that something that you consider?
Yeah. So I've thought a lot about this. And so I'll talk about Eden, Fractally, and Pomelo. So for Eden and Fractally, I do believe we have an advantage in the beginning. And I'll speak later about whether that's fair or unfair. But from what I understand, the vision of Eden and Fractally is to segregate by locality. And so all the bees that participated in Eden were our princess bees who could speak English, but there was only one Eden. And at the time, EOS Bees had no funding. And I was trying to decide whether to do this or not. Like, I eventually, like, when I got to the chief delegate role, that was a signal to the community, to me, that this is wanted, and I now work full time for EOS Bees. But in a more mature Eden or Fractally system where the languages are segregated, I do understand that's the plan, then there's no advantage there. Now, on Pomelo, there is certainly an advantage because of the formula. Now, for certain teams, like, we're obviously a really big team, so it's kind of, I feel like, a subjective determination whether we deserve more funding because we are a bigger team, we have more people to pay, or not. It's not really worth me to say, I feel, whether it's fair or unfair. I mean, it's totally subjective. However, with Pomelo, so Pomelo season 2 is coming up. Pomelo season 1, my mind frame and the expectations from the community before season 1 and before season 2 are very different. I have asked my bees. Before season 1, one of the things that we did not know about before season 1 was EOS Detective and the work they were doing with EOS Detective. So when at the end of season 1, when the Pomelo team was able to show me, so EOS Bees got a reduction in the matching fund from Pomelo's.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. How much was it reduced by?
So it was reduced by around $1,500. And I spoke about this in the chief delegate meeting. What was very encouraging to me, that the Pomelo team, I mean, they spent over a month analyzing the results. They did a lot of work, and that work that they did now allows me to have leverage for my bees. Let me just take a step back for a second. My bees do not listen to me because I say so. They are fully responding to the incentives of the system that's built. the incentives of the Pomelo system is for all of them to donate and use the treasury funds to donate. That's just the incentive of the system. But with EOS Detective, when the Pomelo team shows me, okay, here's why you got reduced 1,500, the exact account names. Okay, now we have something. Now I can go to my bees. If I see your name on this list, we're going to have a problem. And so the bees understand this now. And, you know, we had a meeting about it as soon as it came out. And so it's kind of about expectations and leverage. And I expect it to be more in line with the community's expectations this season.
So then effectively, you're going to ask your bees then to not make any donations. Is that your kind of corporate position? Like if you're a worker bee, you shouldn't be donating on Pomelo. And if we see you on EOS Detectives, then there'll be an issue. Is that kind of how you're going to plan to solve this?
Correct.
That's awesome. That's a really great, simple, succinct way of solving it. I think that's really cool. It's the same with us as well. We don't let any of our team donate to Pomelo. But I did set up an account for my girlfriend and my mum because they didn't know how to set EOS accounts up. So when I heard about EOS Detective, I was a bit worried. I was going to get my $100 removed, but they took pity on us, and that was fine.
Great product, EOS Detective. Great product.
Yeah, super cool, super cool. Okay, so let me ask you a little bit about Helios and Brock Pierce. So I just wondered, what's your overall view of their contribution to the ecosystem? And do you have any kind of day-to-day dealings with them? Do you operate with them? And do you think maybe they could be a potential source for funding for the EOS Bees in the future?
So let me start off by saying that interview you did with Brock outside of the club was one of my favorite interviews. That was such an epic interview. And the color that Brock gave, I learned so much like about the legal system and life in that interview. That was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was good. It was a lot of fun doing it. It was a good interview. Yeah.
I remember in 2018 on John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, EOS and Brock Pierce. And that allowed us to hit our all-time high. Again, we're talking about sentiment, perception, and how it relates to price. I'm a big believer in that. And so generally speaking, I know that there was a conflict between Brock and Yves LaRose. I hope that that's at least resolved in some way, that they can continue being in the same community. That looks like that's the case. So I'm very happy to see that. We were talking about influencers earlier. Brock is the #1 EOS influencer by far. And so I'm a big supporter for him in the community. I was on their Breakfast and Blockchain show last week with the Helios team. And I was just telling them how grateful I am that the team stayed on EOS after what Brock describes as an unexpected event with what the block producers did. And so, yeah, I'm a big supporter of Helios. I have a chief delegate who's one of my fellow chief delegates is on Helios. And then Waxa, who's EOS marketing. Obviously, we're marketing. So I've spoken to him quite a few times, not like as representative of Helios, but I do speak to them personally. My first official talk with the Helios team was on that Breakfast and Blockchain. Gavriel was on that team, I guess the head of investments. I'm not sure his exact title, but I was pitching him. I mean, it's hard to get a conversation. I was like, I got to pitch him like while I'm here. And so I was trying to describe the model to get off inflation. You know, how are you gonna become profitable without relying on inflation? And so what I described earlier, that's kind of what I told him. And hopefully I can get continue to speak to him and the Helios team, perhaps in a more like private setting where we can really like dive deep into how that can be done. And but we are a public good now. And I know that the Helios, it's kind of like Helios is VC, ENF is public good. So I think we're more appropriate to get funding from the ENF. But at the end of the call with Breakfast of Blockchain, Gabriel suggested I speak to Frios. They do UBI. And so, perhaps the Helios team can connect the bees with other dApps. Perhaps they can help in that way too. Yeah, I think that was all the questions here.
Yep. All right. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit from kind of the specific projects. So I think you and I kind of emerged onto the EOS scene broadly at the same time. I think we've both been in the community from day one, but maybe a little quieter. We were kind of in stealth mode building Bywire, but also like there was just it was in decline and there wasn't much fun happening. We were just seemed like we were waiting forever. So I just wondered, why did you join the EOS community? What was it that drew you here in the first place? Are you a sadist? I'm just joking. But like, what was it about EOS that made you want to be part of this community?
BitShares and Steemit. They were the most usable, the most innovative, just the best blockchain solutions that I was able to see around early 2017. And Dan is a very remarkable person. And when he was saying he's going to do his Ethereum competitor, I wanted to check it out and I wanted to participate. The reason why I've stayed here and been here is I think there's a big challenge because the EOS token and other crypto tokens, they have like public price discovery. So perhaps people kind of have expectations like a stock. But I've always kind of thought of EOS like you kind of have to think of it as a private company. And if you look at private companies, investors don't get out of private companies like until like the 5 to 10 year range usually. And so it's been 4 years on EOS. And that's really not that long if you think of it from a private company perspective. And I totally I think Block One could have perhaps made our success sooner. But I also do understand that the regulatory challenges of raising that much money, they were not expecting that. And that threw a massive monkey wrench into their plans. And so, I would say, and this is part of the story that I want to tell to these influencers, is that the number one kind of bullish thing for EOS is on the legal and regulatory side, and it involves these public goods that EOS Bees is a public good. We're talking about public goods. If you look at the lawsuit with Ripple versus the SEC, there was an SEC chairman with his last name is Hinman, and he made a speech saying that Ethereum is not a security. But the SEC has recently said that is his personal opinion. That is not an official statement from the SEC. Now, with the regulatory environment, funding public goods so if you are the company who produces the chain and you're funding the public goods, Brock explained in your interview that that's active participant, that's collective investment scheme. And that's what Consensus did for Ethereum. But Block One never did that. And that's part of the stagnation. But now the entity that's funding are public goods is not the entity that sold the ICO. It's not the entity that built the chain. And I don't know of any other chain. All the other chains, if they're doing public goods, it's very much like a collective investment scheme, an active participant. How else are they going to do it? Like, we've gone through 4 years of hell, and now we have this. How is a company who builds the chain going to take the money, give it to a third party, and trust them to fund the public? That doesn't happen. And so I think we're very safe, very, very safe, regulatory speaking wise. And the regulatory kind of stuff moves very slowly. And again, it's the ICO craze. It's only been 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Like, well, there's a lawsuit going on, but this type of thing, like, that's super bullish for EOS. And that's one of the reasons why I am steadfast. Like, these other chains, there's just no way. Like, there's no way they pass the regulatory scrutiny, I don't think.
Yeah, I think with other chains, there's a lot of conflicts of interest between a foundation and the founding company. The same can't be said with EOS. I don't think there's a conflict of interest there. I think the fact that they are about as detached from one another as two organizations should be. So you briefly mentioned there was a lawsuit going on. Are you referring to the ENF lawsuit or a different lawsuit?
No. I was talking about the Ripple versus SEC lawsuit.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. Well, just on that note then, so what's your thoughts then on the ENF's potential legal proceedings with Block One to regain some of that $1 billion or the $4 billion from the ICO fund, the ICO
Yeah,
raise?
I'm looking for more information right now. Like, we haven't had much, and I can't really comment on it until, like, hashtag 4 billion DAO. What is that? Like, I don't know. So just waiting to hear more. I can't really comment on it now.
But the idea, the notion of it, the community kind of putting together a class action lawsuit and then publicly declaring that they're considering legal action against Block One. How do you think that affects sentiment in the community? Is it a added value or a negative to the community? Because you can perceive it both ways.
Yeah, I think for some people it's a negative, and for some people it's a positive. But in regards to, so I mentioned this in the chief delegate call. I have a family member in the crisis management business, and he wrote a book, and he described these very large companies. It's very much in their best interest to settle when they're getting sued. And now if they're suing them for like all their money, like, that's maybe the incentive is not as strong there. But I don't know. Like, look, I'm a big supporter of the ENF. I think they're doing incredible and very much needed work for the EOS community. And hopefully, I just hope that it resolves, that the resolution of it will put the community in a better place. That's really all I can hope for.
So where do you think then the EOS community would be today if the EOS Network Foundation had not formed? And how do you assess their contributions and also their transparency of their actions up until now?
Yeah, EOS Bees would not be a thing if the ENF did not form. First of all, EOS support would not be a thing. I think the community would be in a much worse place if it did not form. I think the two people at ENF are the perfect people to run it. I don't think anyone else can run it like they have, and I think they've been doing a fantastic job with the constant content. They've hired PR agencies. From what I can tell, they're doing everything right. Yeah, I hope that they continue their very rapid pace.
So what do you think the future holds for the ENF then? Because I know from Dan's perspective, he feels it should be a short-lived venture. And I guess that is what Eve has said as well. However, if you're about to embark on a multi-year class action lawsuit, then perhaps the ENF has a longer lifespan. Now, I personally feel like there's a place for the ENF in the long term, but I just wondered, what's your thoughts on the future for the EOS Network Foundation?
Yeah, I think that if they can continue to provide the value that they've been providing, I don't see a reason why they would need to go away. Like the only thing is like, it seems like right now they're the only one with access to this 2% inflation. So I would support just having more parties having access to that inflation, not just them. But I don't see a reason why they would need to go away. I mean, unless like Eve didn't want to do it anymore. Like Eve has described his schedule. And I mean, it just sounds very tough. Like I can imagine, you know, Eve seems like he has a lot of energy, but I personally would probably get burnt out doing what he does. Yeah, so those are kind of my thoughts. As long as they're continuing to provide value and sharing some of those, some of the inflation.
So then, I mean, that's a slight risk factor then, isn't it? Because obviously, if we agree that the ENF could exist for the longer period, then obviously having Eve do so much work, be so reliant upon, should anything, God forbid, happen to Eve, like burnout, then the ENF and possibly the community would be in trouble. So do you think maybe the ENF should consider putting in some processes in place to create a mechanism that is democratic, that would allow for a new leader to take over should Eve decide in the future he no longer wishes to do this, or even just wants a break?
Sure. So that's why I was saying like the multiple parties having access to the inflation, but just looking at the ENF, absolutely. The ENF should have a will, basically, is what you're asking. And it's Zach. Like Zach should be the next guy up. Like, but even if Zach doesn't want to do it anymore, you know, perhaps they would use an Eden type election system. I don't know. I think Eve supports. I'm not sure if obviously he funded Eden, so he supports the election strategy. I think it's a very innovative and very effective election, not just because I was at the top, but I think it's very interesting in the leaders that it picks. Perhaps they can do something like that. Obviously, it's totally up to them, but of course I do support the ENF having a will.
Yeah, I also think if Eve was able to renew his leadership possibly yearly through some sort of voting mechanism or general community consensus, I think that would add more legitimacy to his leadership. Like I personally have no problem with him or Zach doing it forever, but I think because we know them, we trust them, but I think for onlookers and for the next generation, just having a succession process that was safeguarded, as Dan speaks about in More Equal Animals, I just think that makes sense, and I'm sure Eve would be the first to agree with that. But let's move on a little bit now. So I want to talk about your EOS rant mind map thing that you've launched with Patrice from Nova Crypto. So super exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about what this Twitter competition is, what inspired you to create it, and again, what you hope it will achieve?
Yeah, so Patrick introduced me to mind maps, and it's just a great way to organize content. So that's on one side. You have Eve on the other side doing very important content, which is short-term video content. Is extremely important content in any company, in any community, in any ecosystem. And so how do we incentivize other people to do short form video content and to have it displayed in a very engaging way? And so I mean, I was just like laying in bed one day and I was like, wow, we should do this. Like, this is so obvious. And so I messaged Patrick right away. Patrick he's so down to do stuff. That's why I love Patrick. Like he's just, so he had a prototype literally like 3 hours later with the rants that Eve had already done. And so we're doing a Twitter competition. Which is, if you qualify for the rants, there's a few rules: no insults, less than 10 minutes, English only, are some of the rules. If you qualify, I will tweet about your rant from the EOS Bees main Twitter. Likes are 1 point, retweets are 1.5 points. If you get the most points in a weekly period, so we're starting with weekly, maybe we'll go bi-weekly at one point. I don't know, but we're starting with weekly. If you get the most points in a week, you will get a now 50 EOS reward because Eve is matching those funds. So originally it was 25, now it's 50. 50 EOS for ranting. And then what we're going to do is for all the other participants, we're going to select a random qualified rant, and you'll get a so it's kind of late when Eve had offered to match the rewards. So originally it was 10 for the random, but I put 25. So that's not a match. That's more than a match. I don't know. So I'm sticking by my tweet, 25. I'll fund the extra 5. So we're going to pick a random person. We're going to do 25 EOS, and hopefully that incentivizes people to rant. I mean, you just fill out a form, you record the video. It should be easy. So that's the idea. And then when a new community member, so this is like part of our like EOS beginner. I want to build the suite basically of EOS beginner content. We have the DApp ecosystem image. We have the EOS beginners guide. Both piece of content translated in all our languages. Now this is starting in English. This is much harder to translate because you have to do subtitles for each video. I mean, it's doable, but this is in that realm of when a beginner, someone new coming in the EOS ecosystem, and it breaks it up by categories. It's a great way to learn about the EOS community. I can't think of a better way.
So let me ask you, Jesse, a little bit about alt ESIO chains. How important is their value to the overall ecosystem? And how do we reduce conflict and improve cooperation?
Yeah, I think they're really important for the value of our full ecosystem. I think it's a signal that we have a valuable piece of technology. Like Bitcoin has a lot of clones. So that's like something that tells me, okay, Bitcoin is legit. And EOS or ESIO has a lot of clones. So just from that, like very maybe superficial perspective, there's that. Now, when it comes to experimentation, that's really important from what I understand from a technical perspective. From what I understand, some of these ESIO chains have forked the code and made some major changes. And it's just like in EOS Bees, we have, the Turkish hive, they do something, and then, the English hive picks it up, or vice versa. Or the Korean hive does. So it's that type of dynamic too, where we're learning from like independent cultures and stuff like that. So yeah, I super support these other ESIO chains. I was even asked for EOS Bees, would I ever do like EOSIO bees or something like that? And I totally, yeah. But my answer was, we're kind of still figuring stuff out. So gonna get it really solid on EOS before we go elsewhere. Now you asked, how could they be more collaborative? I really like, so someone's already working on that. They're doing that token, the index token, the EOSIO index token. That's how to do it. And so you hold the token and now you're rooting for everyone.
But yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it, because obviously it's kind of like it's an index fund, isn't it, for the entire ESIO basically, and that's really exciting. All high tide rises all ships and all that.
Right.
Okay, so you recently shared your blue paper community feedback, detailing how to improve on the straightforward how-to guide for onboarding. So you kind of discussed your actually really cool idea for onboarding new EOS members through your referral system. So could you tell us a little bit about how your proposal would work?
Yeah, I'm so happy that Randall of EOS Support is supporting this idea, because it's using the labor of his agents very much so. And so let me take a step back and just describe. So I've proposed to build, and EOS, by the way, EOS Support's already building it. They're not even waiting for the ENF to fund them to build it. Hopefully I believe that we're going to have a Pomelo grant for it, so that the community, potentially ENF, can fund us there if they like it. Hopefully we can come up with like some sort of MVP before that. Probably not, but anyways. So Amazon.com is known for great customer service. Why? Because you call them and they get not just a human, but an intelligent, like legit human. They're not outsourcing it. I don't want to insult any countries, but they're not outsourcing it. Like, it's very, very high level customer service. And so I imagine we can provide a lot of value for the EOS community if you can call EOS. You want to call EOS if you have any problems, just like calling Amazon. So that's the vision of this. And so EOS Support is building a portal where, and so they're called leads in the digital, excuse me, marketing industry. We call people leads who are not yet customers or community members, for our sake. And so EOS Support is building a portal. A lead will go into that portal. They will give us some of their information. They will give us some of their information because we are dangling a carrot in front of their face. We're going to give them a reward for doing so. So they fill out the information. If they get authenticated, they get a reward. There's two ways to get authenticated. You can go through Port. This is Luca's great product that he got funded from EOS Nation on season 1 of Pomelo. You can take a passport and it authenticates you as a unique human being without publicly displaying your passport data. So really, really cool stuff. But not everyone has a passport. Not everyone has the upgraded passport that you need for Port. So the other option is to have a very short conversation showing, a very short recorded conversation showing your face with an EOS support agent. If you pass that authentication, you will get a reward. We will pay you to do that. After that, the EOS support agent, I would imagine, shuts off the recording. Okay, here's a curated list of things you can do based off of the information that you gave us. So we're going to ask them for like what I call personality interests. Do you like art? Do you like finance? Do you like pets? What do you like? And then if there's an app that, or a DApp that connects, that, you know, whatever, connects to what they want, the agent can give them that and show them a way around. Now, the agent is also going to talk to them about an EOS account and how the account is different from proof of work chains. And do you want to custody your keys? Do you want someone else to custody your keys? This type of conversation. If the person wants to custody their own keys, this solution could solve our very fundamental account creation problem on EOS. Because if we're going to fund free accounts, who gets the free account? The EOS support agent will essentially decide who gets the free account. And so once that happens, the agent will trigger something. It will pay the agent, and it will pay what we call the affiliate, if there's an affiliate. Affiliate is a person who refers the lead into the EOS ecosystem. So if you have someone like Ivan on Tech, for example, and he has his little referral code, all his users could get authenticated. So that's the idea. There's a couple of bottlenecks. One is the labor of the support agents. If we get to a point where the support agents can't handle it, that's perhaps a signal to the EOS community that EOS support needs more funding. The other is, especially, and the other is like only really in the beginning, I could imagine someone who already has an EOS account, but just wants the reward of going in again and milking that system. But I think that, first of all, there's no perfect solution here. There's always trade-offs in whatever solution you try to do. But I think that the people who have EOS accounts and are still involved in the EOS ecosystem care about EOS, I would hope. And even some of those that don't, they get authenticated once and they can't do it again. So I think this is a reasonable loss. Like maybe you could think of it as like a loss leader strategy, a reasonable loss in the beginning to have a really robust onboarding and referral solution long term.
And I guess to a certain degree in the future, if it gets really busy, there's algorithmic solutions to a lot of the stuff you're describing. So
let me so in the proposal, there is an algorithm that goes based off of Bitcoin difficulty algorithm, where if you have if you have one person who gets converted in a week, that group of participants, the affiliate, the agent, and the lead who gets onboarded, they get a bigger reward compared to if 100 people got onboarded in a week. So the more that gets onboarded in a certain time frame, the reward decreases per participant group.
Do you think then that might create a de-incentive then to onboard too many people, or as many people are available at the time, in the sense that the people or the onboarder might think, well, it's better I only onboard X amount this week and then an X amount next week? Do you think that might stifle growth?
So it depends on the lead source. If you have a person like Ivan on Tech, for example, who has a massive following, the opportunity cost for him, whether his reward is 1 EOS per person or 0.1, the opportunity cost is so small, he's going to keep using the system. Now, if you are paying for advertisements, if you are paying Google pay-per-click PPC ads, and you're relying, and that's like part of your revenue for the ad. By the way, it shouldn't be your only revenue. If you're running an ad on Google or YouTube or whatever, it should be like for your DApp, that hopefully has a revenue model by itself. Perhaps you wouldn't want to use the system in high congestion if you're kind of relying on those rewards. And then, so the third source that's described in the article is friends and family. Now, how many friends do you have? How many family members do you have? Like, if the system's congested, this is not something, even if it's not congested, maybe you have 50 friends at the max, maybe you have 50 family members at a max, 50 EOS, 100 EOS, like, I don't see it as a disincentive.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on a little bit to talk about Fractally then and Eden. So obviously you are an Eden chief delegate and you've done great work. But could you tell us from your opinion, what's your experience of the whole process to date? What works, what doesn't work? And what has Eden actually achieved overall, in your opinion?
Yeah, so the chief delegates, Aaron has some good ideas of what could change with Eden. And some of those ideas are shorter elections. So I think we want to move from 6 months to 3 month election. And by the way, our plan is to propose all of this, and then the next set of chief delegates could ratify it. 6 to 3 months. And I believe we all have consensus, and especially coming from the head chief delegate himself, that the funding discrepancy from the head chief delegate to the rest of the chiefs is too large. So we want to shrink that discrepancy. Those are the two major ones. We're discussing with the other delegates. We may want to implement these rank order voting. So I participated in the kind of test Fractally election last weekend. it seemed, it's not logical, but it actually was more time efficient, the rank order, because everyone's getting paid. So everyone's more okay with like not winning, like especially that first round of Eden, like you don't get anything if you don't get picked as the one guy. So I do think it's a better way to do it, and perhaps we'll adopt that in the next. We don't have a lot of time. It's a month from now. There's changes to the smart contract, so it's probably not going to be. From what I understand, the 6 to 3 months is very doable. Change right away. The funding discrepancy can be done pretty easily by the election. But the changing how the election is run within each group, maybe the next one.
I mean, so how do you feel then the whole process has been? Do you think it's been a success?
Right.
And do you think like what has it achieved overall?
Yeah, so I decided to do EOS Bees based on how I did in the Eden election. So you could say that Eden birthed EOS Bees, EOS support perhaps, I don't want to speak for Randall, Violet Garden. So I do think it was very successful in creating new public good projects for EOS. Now there are other, I would say where it was not successful was providing the chiefs and the normal delegates a way to coordinate amongst each other. That's been well documented, very challenging part of the chief delegate role. We still are, frankly, not very good at it, but we should have more tools to do that.
So you've alluded to how Fractally is an improvement on Eden with the rank order and such. So I get the impression you're probably going to reapply. You may have said it earlier for Eden, but will you also consider applying or seeking election Fractally? And will the EOS Bees have an EOS Bees fractal?
Yeah. So the Fractally thing is like, in my opinion, too early to ask that question. I think it's more than a year away. I would imagine. Maybe, Dan, maybe he can do it in less than a year. But yeah, I mean, look, any opportunity where we can get a funding opportunity, we're going to take as EOS Bees, pretty much. What was the other?
Would the EOS Bees have their own EOS Bees fractal? Is that something you'd be interested in, even if it is in a year's time or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be cool. It would make sense. Like, this is in regards to how do we coordinate with EOS Bees? So like I mentioned before, we're on spreadsheets right now. We're using Discord. It's not the greatest, but I think with the combination of Haifa and having our own fractal, the way I see Haifa is how to organize teams. The way I see Fractally is how to compensate teams. And we want to use both solutions to just have a much better experience being a bee.
Is there, if you were to adopt it in the future, is there any part of you that's concerned that should we embrace it, that Dan Laramore, the creator of EOS Fractally and Eden, he might come up with another new idea and another big progression, and then we're kind of back to where we started? Because I know Eve talks about that a lot. I just wondered, is there any, do you fear that as a risk?
I personally don't consider it as much as a risk as perhaps other community members. Like, the flaws of Eden were very apparent. So I didn't even mention it, but like the major flaw of Eden is it's all continuity and no accountability, basically. And so that's a big problem. That was EOS Bees 1.0. We did all salaries. We had to spend so much effort on accountability. And with Eden 1.0, no one's willing to spend that effort on accountability. So Dan had to, like, that was just an obvious flaw. if Fractally is working like I believe it will, and he's learned from that, like EOS Bees 2.0, we learned this is solid. I'm optimistic. I think Fractally can be a solid improvement. And I think if there's something is good, Dan's not going to leave. And so I think it totally it's circumstantial, totally depends on how it works. And I think that, like if it comes out and it's not working and, we get on the platform for a month and he goes to something else, I don't look, as long as, from what I understand, they're not asking for EOS inflation anymore. So that takes out all the risk. Like, I don't see it as a risk at all, really.
Okay. So I just want to thank you. It's been a really great interview. I just have one question left, and I really appreciate you giving me so much time today. So the final question is, do you think the EOS community collectively can stop the general overall decline, turn around the ecosystem, and make EOS a success again? And if you do believe that, then could you please tell me how we do that and tell everyone else, because we need a roadmap.
Yeah, I do believe that. That's why we're working so hard at EOS Bees. There's many challenges, but one of the challenges that we haven't really spoke about is we have our B code in EOS Bees, and this is no insult, no causing negative reactions. Now, why is that important? Because EOS price is stagnating because we're in a crypto media war, basically. But it's not a war of aggression like Russia and Ukraine. It's a war for respect. And when someone insults you, the natural reaction is to insult them back. But if we can train our EOS community members to not do that, and instead say, no, actually, look at this type of thing, we're going to gain the respect of the rest of the crypto community. That's what we need to do. If we can think about it as a war of respect, that is the first step. Now, concurrently, the ENF and the blue papers, from what I understand, the technical documentation and onboarding new developers is very poor on EOS.io, not just EOS. So if we can make it easier for developers and have a mindset shift in the community, that's how we get out of this.
Okay, Jesse, so a mind shift is what we need. I just wondered though, and I know you've spoke about this a lot on your onboarding ideas, but how can we create a funnel to attract, the next generation of EOS users? Because to me, winning over the old users or fighting fight is very, very important, but it's not the key element here. How do we just open this funnel and just attract the millions of people who are yet to even test the blockchain yet?
Yeah, so we need the killer dApp, as they say. Maybe it's Fractally, maybe it's something else. We need multiple. We have Upland. That's been very, very successful. But hopefully with the onboarding and referral funnel, going into a dApp that's on the top of dApp radar and the like, that will open the floodgates. And funded reward, it's like PayPal, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, the way they were able to get PayPal to the masses is they paid people $20 to join. We need to pay people to join, funded by EOS inflation. This is what we should do. Qualified people. So this is why the qualification of the onboarding system is so important. Qualified, real people paid by EOS inflation to an innovative product. That's how it's done.
Well, Jesse, I think it's been one of my favorite interviews. You've got some phenomenal ideas. your contribution to the community has been almost second to none. So I just want to thank you for all your hard work and all your contributions and all your ingenuity as well. So thank you for today, and thank you for all your contributions. And I'm really excited to see what you do next with in the EOS community.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. Have a great day.